Hello and welcome back to a new video here on my channel. My name is Mara and welcome to my channel, Mara Cuja. In case you haven't done so already, please make sure to like, share and especially subscribe to my channel for more future content like this. I would suggest to start as always right with the case. Today, as you may have already seen in the title, I am about to tell you something about the case of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, the two students from the Netherlands who went missing in the Panamanian jungle in 2014. They met each other while working in the cafe or restaurant in den kleinen Hub. I hope I pronounced this correctly, in den kleinen Hub. This is where they met. Lisanne has just finished her bachelor's degree in applied psychology, and Kris also finished her bachelor's studies in cultural social education. And for Kris, she wanted to continue her studies in the field of art, so she wanted to study art history after her coming back from Panama. They originally planned to make a gap year, and their stay in Panama, which was supposed to last for about 6 weeks, was only part of this gap year. And yeah, originally they wanted to go to Panama because Kris, as she was a younger girl, she was on a holiday with her family in, I think it was Costa Rica, so it was also a country in South America. And this is when she was getting fascinated with the South American culture, and she wanted to, well, return there after her studies in order to see a little bit more of the world, to get a deeper understanding of different cultures. I mean, she even had her bachelor's degree in social culture education, so she was definitely interested in different cultures. And same goes for Lisanne, because Lisanne only had traveled to the south of Germany, to the Schwarzwald so far, with her family. So Lisanne hadn't seen much of the world yet. And as Kris suggested, to make a trip to Panama and to improve their Spanish skills, and also to help local children in Panama to maybe improve their living conditions for some time, Lisanne was of course also very interested in the entire idea. And soon after they came up with this idea, or Kris came up with this idea, they started to save some money while again working in den kleinen Hub, which was the cafe I also met in. And in fact, Lisanne was only moving out from her parents' home to the student house where she was about to live together with her probably best friend Kris Kremers, only a couple of weeks before their fateful trip to Panama. Speaking about Kris and Lisanne, it's also important to get to know their character traits a little bit better, to understand why it was so unlikely of them to just wander off, because both of them were described to be very responsible. Kris was described to be the more extroverted one of the two. She was more sociable, she was more talkative, and she enjoyed to socialize with others, basically. Her favorite band were the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and she was definitely the more outgoing one of the two. Lisanne, on the other hand side, was rather shy. She was more introverted, but she still enjoyed to socialize with others, although she was a bit shy at first, as I already said. She enjoyed listening to the music of Coldplay, and she also liked spending time with her family, and the same goes for Kris. So both Kris and Lisanne had a rather tight bond with their families in the Netherlands, and so they also decided to stay in a regular contact while they traveled to Panama. On March 15th, 2014, Kris and Lisanne would board a plane which would bring them from Amsterdam to Costa Rica. And from Costa Rica, better say from San Jose in Costa Rica, they would travel by bus to Bocas del Toro. I hope I pronounced this correctly. So yeah, and from Bocas del Toro, they took a boat which would bring them to the Isla Colon, which was an island close to Bocas del Toro, or better say also in the province of Bocas del Toro. And this is where they would spend 2 weeks. During their stay there, they attended the Spanish school, Spanish by the Sea, and they also got in contact with other travelers. For instance, they also got in contact with 2 Dutch men. On March 29th, Kris and Lisanne traveled to their host mother's or host family's home in Phuket. And in fact, Miriam Guerra Guerrero, I'm so sorry again. She was the host mother of Kris and Lisanne, and she only lived like some walking minutes away from the Spanish school they planned to attend there, called Spanish by the River. And the Spanish by the River school was like their school where they planned to improve their Spanish skills, but they wanted to volunteer at another school. So this school was also sometimes referred to as a nursery, sometimes it was referred to as a daycare center for children, but I will refer to it as a children's school. And in fact, Kris and Lisanne even brought some toys with them from the Netherlands to Panama for these children they planned to work with. But sadly on Monday, March 31st, both girls were sent away from the daycare center for children, the children's school they planned to volunteer, and they were told that they could come back in, well, a week later, because by now they wouldn't be able to offer them any work, basically. And this really bothered them, especially Lisanne, because Lisanne made so many plans what she wanted to do during their stay in Panama, and now she had the situation that her entire plans were messed up with by this school, and she was really angry about this. She even contacted her parents and told them that they were sent away and that she was really sad about it. She was really disappointed and also a bit angry probably. And she also made a note or an entry in her diary. And in the evening, after they were sent away from the daycare center, the nursery for children where they wanted to volunteer, Kris would stay in her room, which they shared in a bouquet at their host family. And she would read a book. While Lisanne, who was said to be the more shy one of the two, decided to get in contact with Miriam. And she used this opportunity to also improve her Spanish skills, because she tried to talk to Miriam in Spanish. But Miriam would report that she struggled quite a bit with the Spanish language. So we can assume that both Kris and Lisanne already were able to speak a bit of Spanish, but not... They probably did not have a decent amount of skills concerning the Spanish language. So yeah, still Lisanne wanted to improve her Spanish skills, and she told Miriam basically the same, that they were sent away and that they now had basically nothing to do for the entire week. And she also told her she was feeling a bit upset about this. Miriam would report later on that during their conversation, Lisanne coughed quite a bit, and she was seemingly having a cold or something like this. Still, Miriam could not say if Lisanne was actually having a cold or if she was suffering from an asthmatic attack. So we don't know if Lisanne had asthma, but it's possible. She definitely coughed quite a bit. And on the day they were supposed to go hiking, they wanted to go out hiking, they were seen allegedly in the morning going to a local pharmacy and buying or basically quite a bit of mosquito spray, and also a bit of maybe something else. We don't know exactly, because police told us that allegedly they saw Kris and Lisanne in the morning, and that there was CCTV footage showing them in the local pharmacy and also in a local supermarket. But concerning the local pharmacy, this CCTV footage was never published because it was overwritten, so it got lost. Yeah, this was on April 1st, so the day they would disappear. On March 31st, on Monday, the day prior to their disappearance, Kris and Lisanne went to their Spanish school, Spanish by the River, and in order to use the Wi-Fi connection there. And they were also known to use the computers at the language school, because we don't know for sure if their host family, if Miriam had a Wi-Fi connection or a computer. So we only know that they used to attend or went to the Spanish by the River school in order to use the internet connection there. And this was also the last time their phones made a Wi-Fi connection. And they were also said to have met a local tour guide on this day, on Monday, March 31st. And allegedly they met at the Spanish by the River school. And this tour guide offered them a hike through the Pianista Trail, and he also offered them to stay at his ranch in the jungle for the night. And for unknown reasons, Kris and Lisanne seemingly denied this offer, well, at least the offer to stay at his ranch, but allegedly, they were said to make an appointment for a hike on the Pianista Trail on Wednesday, April 2nd of 2014 at 8 a.m. And this is a little bit confusing, but just take it for now and we will get back to this later on. But now we have the situation that Kris and Lisanne were at the Spanish school. We are still at March 31st, 2014. They are at the Spanish school. They had a Wi-Fi connection which linked their phones and probably thus also Kris and Lisanne to the Spanish school. And allegedly this was also the day they met the local tour guide who offered them a hike to the Pianista Trail. And at this Spanish school around this time they had to meet Eileen. And Eileen was a German citizen who was the same age as Kris and Lisanne, who were 22 and 21 years old at the time. She was around the same age and she worked at the Spanish school, but she was new there. She arrived in Bocate at the Spanish school about maybe 2 weeks prior to this, so we don't know exactly, but about 2 weeks prior to this. Interestingly enough, Eileen would leave only a couple of days after the disappearance of Kris and Lisanne. And she was one of the last people seeing them alive. So on Tuesday, April 1st, 2014, we have two timelines for this day. We don't know exactly when Kris and Lisanne actually started to walk the Pianista Trail. The first timeline I want to talk about is the timeline suggested by the camera photos. And this timeline suggests that Kris and Lisanne started at around 10:30, we don't know exactly, but around 10:30, 11 a.m. And the problem is that the time setting and the date setting of the camera, of the Canon camera of Lisanne, they were not accurate because the Canon camera also showed the date of 2013, yet we had the year 2014. It also showed the time which would be accurate for the Netherlands. Comparing the times of the Netherlands and Panama, we are talking about a time distance of 7 hours. The first timeline puts Kris and Lisanne at around 11 a.m. on the Pianista Trail. The Pianista Trail is said to take up to 3 hours. Tour guides can make the way in 1 hour, 1.5 and Kris and Lisanne were both fit. So yet they were still taking photos, of course. So we can assume that they would, if they would just walk up to the El Mirador platform and enjoy their view there, take some photos and walk back to the Il Pianista restaurant at the start of the trail, at the Pianista Trail, we can assume that they would need about 2 hours. And what is supporting the theory that Kris and Lisanne, that the time setting was right and that Kris and Lisanne actually started their hike at around 11 a.m. is that there is a shadow and sunlight analysis done on these photos. Still, there is a problem with this timeline because allegedly there are a couple of witnesses who say that they have seen Kris and Lisanne at the start of the Pianista Trail at around 2 p.m. And also the taxi driver who brought Kris and Lisanne to the start of the Pianista Trail says that he brought them there at around 1:40, 1:45 p.m. And we also have the situation that at the start of the Pianista Trail, there is a restaurant called Il Pianista. And the owners of this restaurant, Doris and her husband Giovanni, they say that they have seen Kris and Lisanne on April 1st at around the same time. So also, I think at around 2 or 3, I think 2 p.m. that day. And they also stated, or at least Doris stated, that her husband Giovanni was not there, but that she gave her dog, or their dog, Blue, to Kris and Lisanne. But the problem with Blue is that we have absolutely no proof or whatever that Blue ever hiked together with Kris and Lisanne, because I wonder, they were making so many photos. And now imagine that there is a cute little dog. I mean, Blue looked quite cute. Why did they not take a single photo of Blue? Still, allegedly, Doris gave them Blue in order to hike the Pianista Trail together, so that they wouldn't be all on their own. We also know that there have been robberies on the Pianista Trail. It is seemingly a pleasant day hike, as it had been described online, but the problem with the Pianista Trail is that it should only be walked while being with a guide or with someone who's familiar with the area, because again, there have been robberies, and even if it's unlikely to get lost on the Pianista Trail itself, there's still the danger of becoming the victim of local criminals, for instance. We know that South America has also a problem with criminality going on, and although Panama is said to be one of the safest countries in South America, it still is known that the El Pianista Trail is a hotspot for tourists, and yeah, it's a country struggling with poverty, and we know that there happened robberies prior to this, so it is definitely safer to walk this trail with a guide. If we say that Kris and Lisanne had been at the start of the El Pianista Trail at around 11 a.m., then it would be more likely that they had been at the, or we know that they would have been at the summit at around 1 p.m. and so they had more time to get lost in the jungle than they would have if they had only started their hike at around 2 p.m. because then they would be at the summit, at the El Mirador platform at around 4 p.m. Sorry, at around 4 p.m. If we go with the second theory, this would mean that when we look at the last photos taken of Kris, where some people already speculate that she looks scared or a little bit uneasy, so a little bit pressured, maybe, we don't know, but definitely not as relaxed as she used to look prior to these last photos, then we can assume that the first emergency call emergency call attempt was done only about 10 minutes after these photos were taken. This means that something must have happened there. If we go with the first theory, that they happened at the start of the El Pianista Trail at around 11 a.m. and happened at the summit at 1 p.m. around, then they had much more time to get deeper and deeper into the jungle. And this means that they had more time to get lost. The thing is, the first emergency call attempt by the girls, by Kris and Lisanne, was made at 4:39 p.m. on April 1st. And this makes us question if the second timeline is actually correct. What happened shortly after the last photo showing Kris in an uneasy mood, that only about 10 minutes later they set an emergency call? So this suggests that something must have happened. If we go with the first timeline, then the girls probably were already quite deep in the jungle. Maybe they also found out that they weren't alone in the jungle, because we know that this route, crossing the El Pianista Trail or crossing the summit of the El Mirador platform, we know that this trail is walked by, I hope I pronounce this correctly, but we know that this trail is walked by the Ngobi natives, so we know that there are definitely natives walking these roads. So it is, maybe not a ton of natives every day, but if you are out there for a week or two or whatever, it's very unlikely that you wouldn't meet a single soul out there. Now we are at April 1st, but if Kris and Lisanne probably were still alive. At least that's what I think. And this is also when they tried to seek help, when they called emergency lines at 4:39 p.m. for the first time. I will show you a photo where you can see the exact times when Kris and Lisanne, or maybe someone else, but at least someone, tried to reach emergency lines with the phones of Kris and Lisanne. And yeah, because it's easier than me just sitting here and reading it for you. So you can pause and have a deeper look at it, or we continue for now. Then on the following day, on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2014, at around 8 a.m., the local tour guide I've mentioned previously waited at the Spanish school, Spanish by the River, in order to meet Kris and Lisanne there, because allegedly he was having a hiking tour planned with them this day. And of course, Kris and Lisanne were not found anywhere around the school, so he got in contact with the school staff, told them about what happened, that the two girls are nowhere to be found, but he had an appointment with them for this time. And this is when Eileen, remember her, gets involved again. And she, well, first of all, she helps this tour guide looking for the girls at the Spanish school, but they are not there. So they decide to ask Miriam, the host mother of Kris and Lisanne, who only lives a few walking minutes away from the Spanish school, so maybe only 2 walking minutes away. So it's really a close proximity. And yeah, this is when they're there, but Miriam is not there. And that's when Eileen calls Miriam and asks her if she knows anything about the whereabouts of Kris and Lisanne. Miriam tells Eileen that she hadn't seen Kris and Lisanne either, and that they hadn't come home the day prior to this. But allegedly, Miriam was not too scared of the well-being of Kris and Lisanne, because she often has international students staying at her house, and she knows that a lot of students like partying and staying out all night long, although this is nothing she would have thought about Kris and Lisanne, since they were both kind of serious and responsible. but still, she's not their mother, and I understand it. So she wanted to give them a little bit more space and a little bit more free time, and she was not too concerned. Also, the dog Blue, if he actually accompanied the girls, was coming back the day prior to this to the owners of the restaurant Il Pianista. So no one thought that anything bad might have happened to Kris and Lisanne. The restaurant owners only thought that it was strange that they didn't bring back Blue personally, but they didn't think too much of it. Maybe they were just in a rush, or maybe Blue went back earlier on his own, so they did not think of anything bad at this point in time. And the same goes for Miriam. And now the local tour guide, together with Eileen, is at the house of Miriam. And Miriam tells them where they can find a second key so that they would be able to get into the room of Kris and Lisanne. This tour guide entered their room, and he said that he had the feeling that no one slept in this room that night. He had this feeling. And it was strange because they left so many important things in their room. So they did not bring any phone chargers with them. They seemingly did not have any survival equipment or whatever. There isn't a dress for going on a multiple days hike. They were only dressed lightly with normal clothes, and they only had one backpack with them, with normal clothes in them as well. And this tour guide now gets even more suspicious, and he sees that he feels like no one had been there the day prior to this. And so for whatever reason, remember, it's in the early morning hours of April 2nd, for whatever reason, Eileen and this tour guide decide to go to his ranch in the jungle and wait there until Miriam gets back. Now they're in the jungle at the ranch of this tour guide who's allegedly seen Kris and Lisanne once before. He later even denied seeing them once before. Later he would say that he had never seen them before. We still don't know how they even would have made an appointment with him, or how they even got his number to make an appointment, or whatever. There was no email contact prior to this. There was no certain phone there was no phone contact prior to this. So we don't know if they even had contact prior to this. We only have his first statement saying that he met Kris and Lisanne on March 31st, offering them a tour to the Pianista Trail. We don't even know if they ever had contact. We don't even know if he had met them before, because later on he again denied even seeing them once before. And we have to wonder, like, this is a tour guide who was allegedly having an appointment with two young women he's never seen before, and yet he goes to the host family of these girls. Then he goes with Eileen for whatever reason to his ranch in the jungle, stays there the entire day for whatever reason again, gets in contact with the Spanish school employees for whatever reason, because to find out if they have seen Kris and Lisanne. He's seemingly very, very upset about the whereabouts of Kris and Lisanne. Two girls he may have never seen before. Yeah. In the evening hours, so there are two theories again concerning the time. Some sources say that it was around 7:30 p.m. Other sources say that it was only about 9:30 p.m. That we don't even know who reported them missing to Panamanian police. We don't know if it was only the tour guide or the tour guide and Eileen. What we know happened next on April 3rd, 2014. The exact same tour guide starts a private search for Kris and Lisanne, because he is sure that Kris and Lisanne had been walking the Il Pianista Trail as they went missing, because he knew that he for whatever reason is very sure, very convinced that they went missing on this Il Pianista hike. Back then we did not have the photos, we did not have their mobile phones to make any suggestions, any assumptions about their whereabouts, but he knew that they went missing at the Il Pianista Trail, because this is where they allegedly wanted to walk the following day together with him. And this is why he assumed that they were there. So yeah, he started to look for both Kris and Lisanne on the Il Pianista Trail on this day. 2 days later, on April 5th, 2014, the same tour guide, again, it is always the same tour guide, starts a voluntary search around the area of Bucate and especially around the area of the El Pianista Trail. So it's again the same target. He's very, very involved in these. Lisanne's mother was woken up in the middle of the night by a strange woman she did not know, who told her that her daughter was missing. Like, why didn't police do this? And why did Eileen do this? And why didn't even the principal of the local Spanish school do this? Why Eileen? Eileen had only been there for about 2 weeks by now, and she would leave. This is also interesting. As the search for Kris and Lisanne got deeper and deeper, and as Sinapro and also local police and more volunteers and also Dutch police and the parents of Kris and Lisanne started to get more and more involved in the search, and pressure started to rise, Eileen disappeared and she left Bucate, although she had only arrived there 2 weeks prior. On April 8, 2014, they started to look for Kris and Lisanne with helicopter. On the same day, also on April 8, 2014, this was the day when between 1 and 4 a.m., so in the middle of the night, there were these strange nighttime photos taken. So I know that these photos have been analyzed, and I will not go into any assumptions about these nighttime photos, because I will focus on the other things concerning this case, and I will leave you sources down below. So if you want to know more about the assumptions around these nighttime photos, then please feel free to look it up yourself, because this would be way too long. So this would be too much for a single video. But there are people saying that there is a secret code behind of these nighttime photos, because there are always some photos taken in certain sequences, and some people assume that there might be a secret message behind them. Other people assume that they wanted to use the flashlight in order to orientate themselves in the jungle. But then I would wonder, how is it possible, or why would they only come to this conclusion after being in the jungle for about a week? And we know that on the day they disappeared, the moon was a new moon, so it was basically pitch black in the jungle, and this was the first days of their disappearance. So it would have made much more sense if these nighttime photos would have been taken in the very early morning hours or nighttime hours of maybe April 2nd, because there was a new moon again. And yeah, not a week later when there is at least a little bit of moon. So it was quite very dark in the jungle probably, but not as dark as when they originally disappeared. And there is some sources saying that they might have wanted to protect themselves from animals, or other sources claim that they wanted to that there is paranormal things involved. I don't know, but I think there was nothing paranormal involved. About 10 weeks after the disappearance of Kris and Lisanne, so in June 2014, something really, really strange happened, because this is when a native woman claimed to have found the backpack of Kris and Lisanne floating at a riverbank of the Culebra River in a rice paddy. And she was really, really sure that this backpack, that there is no way that this backpack was there the day prior to this as well. So we don't know how this backpack came to this rice paddy, but this native woman was really, really sure that she would have seen it if it happened there the day prior to this as well. So yeah, this is really strange. And what is even stranger is that this backpack, it was a very generic, basic backpack, so nothing special. It was made out of cheap fabric, and it was not even waterproof. So yeah, one may wonder how it was possible for such a backpack to arrive at this rice paddy at the bank of the Culebra River in completely normal condition. Like, it did not look like it had spent over 10 weeks in a river, in a floating river, let alone in a jungle during the rainy season. Then it was really strange, because also the things within this not even waterproof backpack, they were still functioning. Within the backpack there were the 2 mobile phones of Kris and Lisanne, Kris' iPhone and Lisanne's Samsung, so they were also still functioning. At this point in time, the battery of the phones had died, but the phones themselves, they were seemingly still functioning. Same goes for Lisanne's camera, Lisanne's Canon SX270. It was also still working, and the camera even still had a battery left, so it was still functioning properly. There were also 2 bras found within this backpack. Also the bras, they were dry and seemingly clean. And one may wonder, why did Lisanne and Kris put off their bras? Like, this is really strange, and we can see from the photos that they had taken previously, if we look close enough, that these 2 bras found within the backpack were the exact same bras. Both of them were wearing the same day. This is really strange. And why would they take off their bras? There are a couple of theories, but let's get back to the backpack and to the content it contains. So also within this backpack, there were 2 sunglasses found. One of Kris probably, and one of Lisanne. And there was also some money found within this backpack, which makes it really unlikely that the disappearance of Kris and Lisanne was linked to a robbery, because there were over $80 still found within the backpack. Some sources, however, claim that it was only about $37 found within the backpack, but still, there was definitely some money found within this backpack, and this makes it very unlikely that it was just a robbery, or even a robbery gone wrong. Talking about this backpack, what is even stranger is that about 34 unknown fingerprints and DNA samples were found on the backpack, on the smartphones, and on the camera, as well as on the bra. On the bra, there were 6 different fingerprints and DNA samples found. So this suggests that a couple of people must have held the backpack, the phones, the camera, and the bras in their hands. And there is also a water bottle found within this backpack. I haven't mentioned this previously, but there is also a water bottle found within this backpack. And we don't even know what type of water this water bottle contained. This would have been such an important evidence. Like, did this water bottle contain the original fluid, like the original water from the brand the water bottle was from, or did it contain like only tap water, so that we can assume that it was refilled in maybe Miriam's home, or maybe at another home, or did it contain water from the river? And a lot of people assume that it might be possible that Kris and Lisanne took this water bottle and refilled it with water from maybe a nearby lake, sea, whatever. Maybe the Culebra River itself even. The problem is we don't know, because this water, as far as we know, had never been analyzed properly. And a lot of people assume that it is possible that the 2 of them got sick after consuming this water and died as a result of this. Because, for instance, you can get diarrhea when drinking water that might contain certain bacteria, especially European tourists are not familiar with. The problem is the jean shorts of Kris, which had been found around the same time, did not contain any evidence that Kris suffered from diarrhea prior to dying. And what's even more important is that these jean shorts never were on a dead body, because dead bodies, they give off certain fluids, and these jean shorts, they had never been worn by a dead body, by a corpse. And up to this day, we don't even know how these jean shorts were found, because they were not within the backpack as the bras were, but they were found either floating in the Culebra River, or they were found on a rock close to the river bank. And the version in which the jean shorts had been found on the rock close to the river bank, in this version, the jean shorts had been zipped and properly folded. So this is also really, really strange, but we don't know. The official version is that these shorts were found properly folded and zipped, but people joining the search group who found these shorts, they state that they found it floating in the river. Still, when thinking about the floating in the river theory, one may also wonder how it is possible that these jean shorts did not sink or got destroyed or whatever. Also important to know when talking about the backpack is that the backpack was not even found close to the summit of the Pianista Trail, to the El Mirador, where the last, or some of the latest or last daytime photos were taken by Kris and Lisanne. But it was found about 8 walking hours away from the summit. So in case Kris and or Lisanne may have left the backpack for whatever reason there. They would have had to walk 8 hours straight to reach this point. And it was also over 17 kilometers away from Miriam's home, so the home of their host family. So again, this is really, really, really unlikely that Kris and or Lisanne dropped the backpack there. Yet it's also unlikely that the backpack was just floating there for 10 weeks or even longer in the Culebra River. We also don't know whom these DNA and fingerprint samples found on the backpack, on the smartphones, on the camera, on the bras of the girls, to whom these DNA samples and fingerprints, to whom they belonged to, because this had never been properly researched by the prosecutor or by Panamanian police. We only know that one fingerprint matched with Panamanian database for criminals. What's also interesting is that we do not even have witness statements. So the woman who found the backpack was never properly investigated. So there is no official witness statement. Police did not even, brought her in to question her about what happened when and how she can be so sure that the backpack hadn't been there the day prior or maybe even the weeks prior to this. All we know is that she allegedly said that she is sure that she had not seen the backpack there before. Also in June 2014, better say on June 19th, 2014, the prosecutor, Besaida, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Besaida Pitti, stated publicly that human remains had been found. And when talking about human remains, we are not talking about an entire skeleton or about an entire corpse. No, we are talking about something much more sinister and also much more disturbing. We know that there had been an entire human foot found. Later we found out that this foot, which was still in the shoe and inside a sock, belonged to Lisanne Froon. And what we also know about Lisanne's foot, it was probably the left foot, and we know that it was terribly injured when it was found. This is so often neglected when talking about this case. The foot that had been found was completely destroyed, basically. So about almost all bones within this foot had been scattered. What other forensic experts stated was that they believe, or that they would assume, that Lisanne's foot was heavily, severely beaten, which may be even linked to torture. Well, they did not speak about torture, but this is how it sounds to me. They said that it is more likely that something fell on Lisanne's foot. So that it is less likely that she fell off a cliff, but it is more likely that something heavy fell on her foot and scattered it as a result. And what's also interesting, the femur, I also mentioned this previously, and the bone reminding prosecutors and experts on a tibia bone, they were also belonging to the left leg, allegedly. So we only found bones, some bones, belonging to Lisanne's left leg. And in total there were 33 bone fragments found of the girls, of Kris and Lisanne. And 28 of these bone fragments belonged to Lisanne's foot. From Kris, we only have half her pelvic bone, and we have the right rib number 10. That's all we have from Kris. And what's extremely interesting about the bones of Kris is that they, compared to the bones of Lisanne, they seemed to be bleached. It seemed like someone bleached them. And it is possible for bones to look bleached, but only if they have been exposed to extreme sunlight. And this is rather unlikely because, again, they were found within the jungle. There is phosphorus found on, or better say within the bones, when they were examined later on. And what's interesting is that in the soil where these bones have been found, there were no phosphorus, rests of phosphates found. So we may wonder where these signs of phosphorus came from, because these bones, they couldn't have just catched it up where they were found, because in the environment around where the bones had been found, no signs of phosphorus were found. All of these bones were found along the same riverbanks, along the riverbank of the Culebra. Thing is that according to Prosecutor Pitti, Kris and Lisanne died while they tried to cross this so-called monkey bridge. And then they fell within the water, and the Culebra River killed them. They have been drowning in it. It was an accidental drowning. And then their body parts have been cut off in this Culebra River. The problem is that when Kris and Lisanne disappeared and probably also died, it was not even the rainy season. It was kind of really dry during that time. So the Culebra River at this point in time wouldn't have been strong enough to dismember the entire body of 2 healthy young females. And Lisanne's foot was only found about 2 kilometers, or I think about 3 miles away from this cable bridge, where they allegedly fell off and died. Kris' bones, there is no flesh whatsoever on it. They looked completely like bleached. There is no flesh whatsoever on it. And Lisanne's foot was still showing signs of flesh, and yeah, so they were clearly in different stages of decomposition. In total, there are 5 stages of decomposition, and Kris' bones seem to be in the last, I think in the 4th stage of decomposition. Lisanne's foot, however, seemingly was only at the beginning of decomposition. And this is strange, because if we assume that they both died around the same time, how is it possible that they have been in different stages of decomposition? Also, when looking at Lisanne's foot, and also on the other bones, when looking on the other bones as well, no signs of animal attacks have been found. Also, no signs that there had been any knives or saws or whatever involved in it to dismember the girls' bodies. It seemed like no trauma had been occurred toward these bones. Problem is, if we go with the theory that lime had been involved, or even lye, I hope I pronounced it correctly, then it would be possible that, first of all, some body parts may fell off the body. I'm sorry if this sounds gross, but this would explain how Lisanne's foot may have come off her body without using a saw or a knife or whatever. And it would have also been possible to bleach Kris' bones, and this would explain the phosphates, the phosphorus found within her bones. And it would also explain the different stages of decomposition, because what I haven't mentioned so far is that Kris and Lisanne's bones, they haven't been found all on their own. They were found together with bone fragments of different people. And these different people turned out to be natives who seemingly died on an accident while being in the jungle. And seemingly for these native tribes, it is more likely to not report a missing persons case at the local police. So yeah, if you're lost in the jungle, you're lost. Kris and Lisanne's bones were often found together. This wouldn't happen usually, and this makes it even more mysterious. During their investigation, they even accidentally stumbled across a former native cemetery, and they dig up the graves. And as they found these graves, they found bones of native people who were buried at the cemetery. And guess what? None of the bones found at this cemetery showed signs of bleaching. And how is this possible that only Kris' bones showed these signs of bleaching? None of Lisanne's bones, none of the bones found within the environment of the bones found of Kris and Lisanne, and none of these bones found of the people buried at this local cemetery. On August 29, 2014, a skin ball was found. So it was a part of the skin from the shine of Lisanne, and it was rolled to a ball. And we don't know exactly why it was rolled like a ball, but experts think that it is possible, or it might be possible, that it was held within like a bag so that it got this shape of a ball. And this skin ball, which is also interesting to mention, was found together with Lisanne's femur and the bone that looked like a tibia bone. These parts of Lisanne's body were found together, and still they were clearly in different stages of decomposition. And interestingly enough, on this skin ball there were lars found, and we know that this sort of lars are the first ones to arrive at a decomposing body. So this skin ball must have been in the earliest stage of decomposition. Also interesting is that 2 different shoes have been found, and one of these shoes, or I think at least one of them, had a changed color, a different color than compared to the color it should have according to the photos taken. So we could assume that either this shoe was also, well, under the exposure of extreme sunlight conditions, or it had been in contact with a bleaching substance as well. And what's even more interesting is that, again, the exact same tour guide we've been talking about the entire time in this video, I feel like, the same tour guide was the one finding all these human remains. He was the one leading the search group who found these remains. What I also wonder about is there were about 25 different paths walked by the search groups, by the search group members who were looking for Kris and Lisanne at this point in time. And it's not the first time that tourists went missing on the Pianista Trail. So usually they are found within the first few days, hours, whatever. But Kris and Lisanne, they hadn't been found. And if they had actually been there the entire time, they must have heard the search groups, or the search groups must have seen or heard them. And concerning the nighttime photos, some may argue that maybe they wanted to raise the attention of some search group members with the flashlight of the camera. But I don't know, why wouldn't they have just shouted? Up to this day, we don't even know where these nighttime photos were taken at. As previously mentioned, it is possible that at least Kris's bones have been bleached, and that farmers within the region often had access to lime, and that lime can help to speed up the decomposition process. Some experts also claim that in case someone actually bleached these bones, so in case there had been foul play involved, that it was someone who is not very experienced with this kind of procedure, due to the different stages of decomposition the bodies were found in. Because why would he only have bleached Kris's bones and none of Lisanne's bones? This makes no sense. What would make more sense is that Kris died first, or someone killed Kris first. We don't know. We don't know at all, but a bit first, and then ran out of time for whatever reason to do the same procedure of bleaching the bones and making the bones disappear, which would also explain why we did not find more bones of Kris and Lisanne. Because maybe he ran out of time, so he couldn't do the same procedure with Lisanne, or maybe just not with the entire body of Lisanne. There are no animals who would be able to eat this skull if it had been an accident, and if the bones were scattered by these wild animals. Where are the rest of the bones, especially the skulls? And also the skin ball that had been found of Lisanne. There are larvae on it. Larvae that arrived the earliest at the early stages of decomposition. And these larvae are also most likely to come up if this skin ball had been like in a dry and also maybe dark environment, maybe buried somewhere, we don't know. But in case it had been buried, it would be more likely that it had decomposed quicker. There was one photo missing. They made so many photos and they did not delete a single one of these photos. Photo 508 was the last daytime photo showing Kris. This is the last daytime photo ever taken of any of the 2 girls, so the last normal photo. Then there is the missing photo, and then there are the nighttime photos. And up to this day, we can only wonder what was on this photo, photo 409, which was so important that someone felt the urge to delete it. And it was not simply deleted on the camera. Someone must have taken a computer, made a connection with the camera, the Canon SX270, and then must have deleted this specific photo manually. What some people assume is that either someone may have been in the photo who may have had something to do with the disappearance of Kris and Lisanne, and later took the extra mile kind of to delete this photo. Because in case this had only been a normal photo, why make all this effort to delete it? And the girls themselves, they had definitely not been able to delete this photo. Also, the camera model, which we are talking about in this case, it is very, very, very unlikely and very uncommon for it to just delete a photo. What some people assume, well, some people argue that the killer was in the photo or something the killer did not want was in the photo, and so the killer or killers deleted it. Other people assume that it was actually Panamanian police deleting this photo, because the Dutch police force, they wanted the Panamanian police to send them over the phones of Kris and Lisanne as well as the camera. I personally think that Panamanian police, for whatever reason, although it was completely differently discussed previously with Dutch police, wanted to at least make a copy of these photos. Still, there are also reasons to believe that someone else may have actually deleted it. Because again, there were, I think, about 12 fingerprints of different people found on the camera alone. We know that the last activity with Kris's phone was on April 11th, 2014. We don't know who made these activities. It could have been Lisanne, it could have been Kris, it could have been a third party. We don't know. All we know is that on April 11th, 2014, around noon, Kris's iPhone died as well. And if we assume that it was actually Lisanne trying desperately to unlock Kris's iPhone, then first of all, we have to wonder why she would have done this, because it is possible, and it even happened possible back in 2014, to dial emergency services even without knowing the PIN of a phone. So in case this was only about reaching emergency lines, which would make the most sense, then we may wonder why it was so important for someone to get into this phone. And we also have to imagine how Lisanne is in the middle of the jungle with a dying phone battery. The only thing that could save her life, that could make it possible for her to get finally help after being for over 10 days, maybe on her own, we don't know, maybe together with Kris, we don't know, in the jungle, in the middle of nowhere. What also does not make sense at all is that one attempt to call emergency lines actually succeeded, but only for 1 to 2 seconds. But still, it kind of succeeded. It was better than nothing, kind of. And I wonder, why would they switch off their phones right after being able to make a connection with emergency lines, even though they will only be able to make a connection for 1 to 2 seconds? But still, they had a connection. And then they just switched off their phones and waited for an entire day, kind of, to try it again. And also, there is kind of a pattern where emergency numbers have been, well, contacted or tried to be contacted. Why only in a certain time frame, or most of the time in a certain time frame? This does not make sense if they were alone. But in case they hadn't been alone, why would a third party allow them to keep their phones? And also, the jungle ranch of the tour guide was never searched. So we don't know if Kris and Lisanne may have been there. We don't know if the tour guide may have been involved or not. All we know is that people came forward, female tourists especially came forward, and claimed that this tour guide was kind of, well, I wouldn't say molesting them, but that he was kind of uncomfortable, or bringing them in uncomfortable situations, because he from time to time was a little bit too touchy, especially with Northern European tourists, female tourists. And it is even said, I don't know if this is true or not, but it is even said that this tour guide was no longer welcomed in some hostels because there had been too many complaints by female tourists about him. In total, there are so many inconsistencies, and I personally could talk about this case for hours and hours on end. I know there is so much more to mention when talking about the disappearance of Kris and Lisanne, but I won't go into any more details today. The last thing I want to include, the last detail, which is also kind of an update to the case and which may help to take in another perspective on the entire case, is that in April 2021, a book on the case of Kris and Lisanne is about to be released. And the author of this book is no one else than the prosecutor involved in the case. The prosecutor had been questioned and doubted and criticized over and over again beside her pity. And the title of the book, Lost in the Jungle. The mysterious disappearance of Kris and Lisanne in Panama. And that's definitely something I'm looking forward to. So let me know in the comment section down below if you want to have an update on this book, or if you feel like you have already so many information by now, because this video is huge. Like, I think this is the longest video I have ever made on my channel. Yeah, let me know in the comment section if you want to know more. Also, if I left out on something you want to include, then please also make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. In case you want to know more about this, please make sure to check the description box, because I will put in some links, better say the links of my sources, and yeah, there you can find out so much more in this case as well. Yeah, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to like, share, and especially subscribe, as always. And I hope to see you next time. Bye, guys!